Alright, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of heads up on texturing. Most of your guys' textures kind of seemed a little bit flat, so I figured we'd go do a little texturing tutorial. So I'm not actually applying this to anything in particular, I'm just going to show you guys this. Um, so the first thing that I want you to show you guys is when you guys do textures, um, you it would behoove you to invest in something called a Wacom tablet. I'm not saying you guys have to go out and do it. You guys can do this um, with a simple mouse. But a Wacom tablet gives you a little bit of pressure sensitivity, texture sensitivity. I'll show you this in a second. Wacoms start from uh, about $60 at Best Buy. They go all the way up to their bamboos when they're that low. The mid-price ranges are called Intuoses, and I think they're up to version 4 now. And you can also get the Cintiq, which is starting at 1,000, going to 2,800. And I don't have one of those. I wish I did. It would be awesome. Anyway, so the big thing is it doesn't really matter what you're doing, but if you're going to pick a texture, you just kind of start with your texture thing, your texture color. Um, Now, with a Cintiq, what you can do is you can do something called shape dynamics, where you set your pen to be pressure sensitive to your pen. Or you can do something like this. All right, and that's why I recommend anyone, any digital artist, anything, doing any type of thing like this, to go out and get one of these tablets. They're not much. Ask for one for Christmas because they're a great, great find. Okay, but anyway, I will. We'll go brush tape shape here, and oops, we're gonna lower my spacing to about 20%. And I'm going to adjust up my size just so you guys can see what I'm doing here. All right, so your initial textures, most of your guys' textures look like this, okay, which is fine. The issue with this is your models tend to look more flat. Um, One of the things that you can do is simply add in your shape dynamics here. And what I do is if you don't have this, just lower your opacity really low. And then what we're going to do is we're going to choose a lower quality, a more subdued texture. Okay. And then I always do hardness down a little bit. Okay. And we're just going to lower our spacing or thing a little bit. So now if we don't have this on, our base texture is going to, oops, look like this. Okay, that's going to be the base texture, and you can of course go in there and play with it. Generally on skin, you're going to have what's rim lighting on it because they have a subsurface scattering technique on there. And what happens with that is your skin becomes a little bit more saturated where the shadow comes in. Okay, so the way this works is what you're going to do is pick the base shadow. So we've got our base color here. We've got our shadow, which is here. This is our subsurface scattering color right there. And then I'm going to pick a highlight as well. And a highlight generally takes the form of the light as well. So we've got our three color range, okay? And then what you're going to do is you're going to pick one of the colors. And if you're doing this with a mouse, you would lower this down quite a bit. You'd probably be, like 5%. And then basically you start shading that in there, okay? Another way to do it is if you go to your color picker, you've got a point sample right here. Right here, as of right now, you're taking one color, all right? And if you can see the color changes, you've got the one color. Well, what I generally tend to do is take an average, okay? And this is because when you're working on this, you can take the mid-tone color, all right? And just kind of paint that mid-tone color in there, all right? Even without any form or shape, you can add that mid-tone color in there and slowly go in and develop it like this, okay? And that's going to give you a nice gradient. Now you see you have those lines in there, so of course you've got to do it again and again and again. This is where the transfer setting of the pen pressure and works comes in really nicely. Because then what I can do is I can pick my color and just kind of fade it out. Again, pick my color and kind of fade it out. And this is really how you kind of blend your colors in. You know, just kind of with the pen pressure tablets. Okay. Now, you know, as we're working on this here, this is kind of how you would basically create, you know, your base skin tone of what you're doing in there. Okay. All right. Now you can go a little bit darker if you want. Add in a little bit darker form. And see, this is how you do the skin tone. Now, say this is my arm, and the big thing with that is I want to add in maybe, let's see here, let's add in a green, or let's just do an off color here. So you see, on a new layer, I'm going to add in this, maybe this is a shirt or something like this, okay? So this is the shirt that I add that in. Well, the first thing that I want to do is I want to go back to my skin layer, and I want to grab some of my shadow. And of course, I'm going to use my transfer, and I would grab that shadow in there, and that's going to give you the look and feel like that shadow is almost popping out. Okay, so now the skin is popping out from there. Okay, the other thing you can do is go in there and take a little bit of this green. Now this is where I take my pen pressure and I move it down to about 15. And I'm going to just add a little bit of green in the skin, because what happens is this green picks up from the skin. Okay, skin has slightly got a reflective quality on it, so it picks that little bit of green up there. And you don't need much, just enough in there to show that it's bouncing that green around. Okay. Another thing you can do is skin will pull up, or your fabric here will pull up this a little highlight. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in just a bit. I'm going to go back up to my full opacity here. Oops. Remember which layer you're working on. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to grab just a base little highlight, and that's going to pop that fabric a little bit more. Okay. Then the next thing you can do is I just grabbed a skin texture, and I'm going to grab this over the skin, and I'm going to move this over my skin, and I'm going to change that to a multiply. Okay. Now that looks horrible, you know, right off the bat. So you can try, you know, lighten. Multiply generally tends to work for me because it'll pull the shadows out from. All right, there's my multiply. So what you can do is you can lower the opacity in there, and that gives you just a hair of a skin texture. Okay, you don't need much in there. I'm going to just transform this down a little bit so I get more of a skin texture in there. All right, and you can also go use your brightness contrast and up the contrast a little bit. See how that makes the skin pop out a little bit more. And you can up the brightness on it a little bit so it doesn't look so dark. Okay, so adding a texture on there is going to help as well. Now you could add a texture to that. Or what you can do is you can make your own texture brushes. Now, making your own texture brushes may seem hard, but it's really not. What we're going to do is we're going to just get off my transfer here. And a texture I'm going to use is, make sure, oh, that's why. All right. So I'm going to just make a real quick texture brush. And for this texture, I'm just going to create some small dots like so. You know, nothing big. And then for texture brush, what you're going to do is you're going to go to the selection here, and I'm going to just select my brush. I'm going to go edit, and I'm going to go define brush preset, and this is my texture brush. Say OK. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here into my brush presets. I'm going to go into the painter so it pops up. I'm going to pick my newly defined shape, which is something like this, and I'm going to rotate it. Rotate it like so. Okay, and that's basically going to give me this pattern like so. Now I'm going to lower my spacing, actually up it a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my transfer colors. Okay, now I'm going to deselect real quick, and I'm just going to lower the brush size. All right, so now if I'm painting a brush, all right, so now there I've got my texture. Okay, now the other cool thing I can do is I can take and make the shape dynamics follow the direction of the brush, and thus get that cross pattern. Okay, so then I'm going to go and pick my color here, make it a little bit darker, and just start, it helps to remember what layer you're working on. Just start going in there and adding a little bit of texture. Okay, and that's pretty much what I'm doing. It's just you want to add the texture and you want to add that light and dark in there. Okay, and that's going to give you the bits and pieces that you need to basically make a better looking texture. And now you can go in depth and go really crazy with it. And you see how just by adding this little bit of texture on there, it almost pops it out a little bit more. Okay, that is going to give you a much better texture. All right, and then don't worry about things. You can go on there and add in, just add in a little quick bump here. I don't want to make this too long. So let's go back and let's go choose my tip shape again, whatever. All right, and all right. Oh, if you get a Wacom tablet, get one with the buttons. They make life a lot simpler. Okay, so the other thing you can do is you can go in there and you can add in, say I want a scar or something in there. It's all these little bits and details, that you want to put in there. So if you add a scar in there, and then say with the scar, we're gonna have a little bit of scar tissue on the side. So, we're just going to kind of pop that up here. You can kind of play around and mess around with that and put in darker scars, a little saturation there. The other thing you can do is veins. Take a slight hue of blue, low opacity, and just kind of draw in your veins. All those little things, all those little details, they're going to make a better looking character. And you may not see them on the character initially, but it'll help. All right. So those are things that you can do to basically make a better and a little bit more realistic texture for you guys. All right.